Yo, my hair's doing this cool flippy thing. It's getting too long. Oh, long and wild. I'm ready to cut it. But every day I'm just like, maybe I'll let it keep going. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Hope we're all having a wonderful Thursday. The week is coming to a close. And we're back again to do some more coding on this job application tracker thing that we've been doing. I don't remember where we were. We're going to take a look. We started doing minimal form setup. It's red text on black background for me. Can I read your name correctly? Use Borin cheat. I have to. It's cheat or chit at the end, because every time I say it, I feel like I'm dropping a curse over here. Welcome back, by the way. Thanks for hopping in and joining us again. Whoa, what is happening there? Let's try that again. PNPM dev. And yet again, just can't remember my keyboard shortcuts as I transition back to using a Mac tonight after using a PC all week. Oh yeah, this is where we were at, right? Look at this. Like just boring shit in a Spanish pronunciation. Well, I'm not gonna butcher the any type of accent at all. I would give it my best, but I would just embarrass myself. So I will keep saying it however I'm saying it and hope it's good enough. So far, it sounds like though I'm doing okay on everybody's screen names. Is this big enough? How are we looking on this stuff? All right, so I don't know exactly what I want to do tonight. Mas Masubi is here. That one I kind of remember. I think I did that one okay. Mas Masubi. Last week when we left off, we had done a very, very basic ass form, which I think we were just, can we go in here and do that? There we go. We were just console logging some inputs, right? We've got some shad CN stuff set up. It kind of looks like garbage because we didn't really do much with it yet, but we just did like, we just did some of this stuff and we submitted and we have console logging going on. So that's fun. That's cool. I think I'm gonna make some coffee and watch the stream. Coffee? Where is it? What time is it where you are that you're having coffee right now? But yeah, I'm a big coffee fan myself. I've been using a French press for the past couple of years and I've never looked back. All right, let's go look. You giving me military time? Is that late though? You're having coffee like late in the evening though? Anyway, don't let me stop you from getting it. 8 p.m. Yeah. So late night coffee. Pretty dope though. Go make your coffee, then come back. We'll do more coffee chat once you're back. I'm interested to hear about your preferences. All right, so stuff I think I want to do tonight. And let's do the whiteboard thing as we look at some of this stuff. So we've already got a basic ass form and we're logging. That's cool. I think what I want to do tonight, at least to start, is I want to connect to our backend and I just want to work through a general process of what it would look like to send data to a backend. We're not really going to do anything with it, but this whole process works very differently with Next.js and with React server components and server actions. So we're going to look at that. So let's just give ourselves a quick rundown of some stuff we're going to do, and then we'll, I guess, go through and just check some of these things off. So we're going to submit form to backend, right? Let's zoom in on this a little bit more. Submit form to the backend, basically to simulate a submission. And then this is a process that we can just repeat over and over and over again for whatever forms we have set up. We'll kind of just make like a general architecture of what we're going to utilize. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently in setting up code bases is like when you make an application, you're most likely going to have like a very specific set of problems that you solve. And when you're talking about CRUD applications anyway, one of the basic things is just like, how does your user submit information on your front end? You send it to your server, and then you do something with it to save it to a database and X, Y, and Z, right? So it's not going to be something we handle in a bunch of different ways. We're really going to have one specific way we try to do this process. So we're going to set up something that we can repeat over and over and over again. And just clicking around over here. So we're going to simulate a submission. We want to make sure we show loading states, right? That's important. You want to make sure that when you actually take an action on your front end, that it's clear to the user that something's happening. And, you know, we're going to be able to display that in one way or another. We'll probably start basic and then we'll add some stuff to it. Maybe if we get there, well, at the very beginning, we're just going to show the data on the back end, right? And we will validate data on the back end. Another thing I'd like to do here with validation, by show, I just mean like this. We're just going to console log to start, right? No big deal. We'll validate data on the back end. So with Zod, we already have Zod set up, I believe, right? We set up our form, React hook form with Zod. So we're going to use Zod to validate our data on the back end and make sure it's what we expect. And if it's not, we're going to have some kind of errors that we report back, and we will respond with errors for front end. So we'll do some error display kind of stuff. And maybe we'll also, if we have time, we'll do some front end data validation too, right? But those are kind of the things that we're going to start with. What I'd also really like to do is revalidating cache for the front end. So one of the things we're going to also do with Next.js, which might be tonight, might not be, but I think we could probably set up a quick example of it, is we're going to go through the process of loading data from a quote-unquote database. We'll just probably have something static in our server. But when we render our server component on the server, we're going to pull all of our data and then put that in to the rendered HTML to the client, send that down, and then once we do one of these actions where we submit something to the back end, we're going to need to revalidate in the front end so that, you know, let's say we add an entry, right? Our basic CRUD stuff, create, read, update, delete. When you add that new entry to your database, we want to make sure we stay in sync with whatever's there. So we're going to, you know, refetch that data, pull down the latest, and refresh the user's visibility into that and show them the new entry. So all stuff you would see if you did like your to-do app tutorials and that kind of stuff, but through a full stack Next.js framework. So we got some stuff here we want to try to accomplish. Let's see how far we can get. Would this Excalidraw be available? You know, I don't know if I can make this publicly available. I don't have like an account with them. Share. Start session, export to link. Export as a read-only link. Okay, let's do this. Can I just, There you go. You might need to, it looks like that link might have showed up a little bit funky, but I think I got the whole thing in there. Let me know if that works out. You can hop in there and take a look at all the, I've been going and going. I've just been working on this one whiteboard this whole time, so you can hop around and see the stuff we got going on here. But this is our checklist of stuff right now. I don't really know if I want to problem solve in this format right now. I think it might just be more interesting to hop into the code and start doing some stuff. So let's go do that, and we'll kind of we'll learn along the way. It worked. Excellent. Great. So hop in that Excalibur and read only, it says, right? So you can just look at it, but cool to check out, right? Okay, let's review what our setup is right now of our code base. We have just a couple things going on here. We've got one page, which isn't doing anything besides, we know this page is a server component because it doesn't have use client at the top, right? So we know that this thing is capable of loading data. We have a job listing form in here, which is a client component. Oh yeah, we made this whole thing. We kind of just threw this together, right? We've got a schema with Zod here, our job listing schema, which we just threw some basic stuff in here. We'll probably change it at some point, but we've got website URL, which is a string, career page, string, job title, string, trim. We set a minimum of 2 so we can do some validation on this one. Experience required, salary, hiring manager, and recruiter. What I didn't do is I didn't make any of these like optional or nullable or anything like that. We'll look at that in a little bit too. We made a type out of it with z.infer. So we have just a basic looking TypeScript type here, which is not going to show me this for some reason. I wonder why. Let's restart the TypeScript server. Maybe that'll help us out. Aha. So we got our basic TypeScript type, which we can use literally anywhere, like for any functions that we want to put it in. We list it here in our use form with React hook form to tell React hook form what our type is so that it can help us with autocomplete in our default values. And also that gets passed through on this form field with form.control to our form components. This is a shadcn component, which I believe if we go look at it, controller props, controller is a React hook form component, right? Here we go. This is the nice thing about shadcn components is they're very, very easy to just go look at, right? This is the code. Meanwhile, if you go into like an MUI source code, things are a little funky and hard to understand. This is just the code. So we know this is React hook form controller, that stuff is being passed into. So we had autocomplete in this too, if we remember. If we control, wrong keyboard shortcut. If we control space here, we see our our keys here, right, that we set up in our Zod type or schema. So all really cool stuff that really, really helps us keep things, number one, like in sync. You know, when you start having different schemas and models and stuff for your data, it's very easy to make typos. It's very easy to leave keys off when you need something in an object and all sorts of messed up stuff. This component isn't gigantic. We can split this up in a little bit once we kind of figure out what we want to do with it. But I'm not really going to do that yet because we don't have a need to. What I would do with something like this is I would put this into like its own folder in components, right? Like just as an example, make like job listing form, something like that. We would do something like that and then, you know, break this out into smaller files and then put it all in there. Like I said, I'm going to avoid, as much as I have the itch to do it right now, because that's just my OCD of project organization kind of kicking into gear. I'm not going to do it right now. because that's getting ahead of myself. I want to do some basic functionality first, and then we can just replicate and all that stuff. So, summary of where we're at. I'm going to take a quick drink, and then we'll start doing some actual coding. Okay. I want to give you a shorter name so I don't have to mess it up every time. Use Boring Cheat is back with coffee. What kind of coffee are you drinking over there? Are you a flavor coffee person? You just going for basic? What's your brand of choice? All right, so I don't know exactly how I want to organize this. I guess again, I'm just not going to organize too well right now. But we are going to throw some stuff in here. And let's reference, before we start coding, let's go reference the documentation. Instant Nescafe coffee. Instant as in like powder that you just put in the boiling water and just stir it up in there. That's some camping coffee. Yeah. How is it? I don't really normally have like a instant powdered style coffee. I buy whole beans. I have a burr grinder. I grind them up. I use a French press. Typically get a hazelnut 8 o'clock coffee brand. Treats me well. I dig it. Let's look here at what do we want to do? Server actions and mutations is what we're going to work on over here, right? So it's always a good idea to reference your documentation so we're not kind of flying off the handle on stuff. But we'll skim this. French press. French press is very good if anybody is a coffee drinker. And burr grinder mentioned. Yeah, dude. Go with the burr grinder, not a blade grinder. Because I'm not well, maybe I am a coffee snob. I don't know. I don't think of myself as one, but I had spent a lot of time going through different coffee makers a while back. I got what was the brand? I'm going to blank on it now, but there was like a really highly rated brand of drip coffee maker, and I bought it. It was damn expensive. And then it just kept like leaking and spilling all over the place, and I was sick of it. So that's when I ended up going for the French press. But a blade grinder will heat up your beans and, roast them before you actually roast them more and ruin the taste of it. Burr grinder is where it's at. Server components. So server components can use inline. Oh, I'm skipping. A server action can be defined with the React use server directive. You can place a directive at the top of an async function to mark the function as a server action, or at the top of a separate file to mark all exports of that file as server actions. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do a separate file. I think that's just a little bit neater than putting server actions inside other files, because you might mix things around and things might end up where they're not supposed to. We talk about server components. You can put the inline use server directive here inside your function, and this becomes a function. So we can clarify here too. I don't know if the React documentation is going to service more here, but basically security considerations, all that the use server thing is going to do for us here is make an API endpoint, which means it's an exposed API endpoint, which means like there's a bunch of videos on YouTube now, people freaking out like, oh, make sure that you're securing your endpoints with use server, because people don't think they need to for some reason, but you always do, right? Make sure your user is authorized and that they have the security rights to do whatever you're doing. So we'll talk about some of that stuff. Pour over has been my method of choice. Too lazy to clean a French press. All I do with the French press is I put a little bit of dish soap inside it, and then I fill it up with water, and then I take the plunger and just plunge it a bunch of times and just mix up the soapy water real good. And that's kind of it. Scrub it down a little bit, but that's kind of all there is to it. I mean, you do have to dump out the coffee grinds into something, so you don't put them down the drain. I've just got like a mesh colander kind of thing, like what you would drain like pasta in. Just put it in that. It's good enough. So we got server component stuff. We got use server. client components can call server action in a client component. We create a new file and add the use server directive at the top of it, make our function in it, and then import it into our client component. So that's really what we're going to do right now. We have some behavior on form element stuff. I'm not really going to mess with that just because it's not my bag. I think people get too lost in setting up the submission on forms all the time, and what do they call it? Progressive. I'm going to blank on the term and I don't see it in here, but there's something about like how you can do all this stuff without JavaScript enabled, but I'm not going to worry about that. We probably will put it in a form submission event because I think that makes sense. Passing additional arguments with a .bind, that's also not super necessary. But okay, we know a basic thing here of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Let's switch this around a little bit. I guess I should try to, oh, I wasn't full screen there. Let's do this. Let us do a left hand and right hand here. I think this is going to be good. Let's try that. Okay. So I think we'll do this in app, in the app directory. We'll do a new folder. And for now, we're just going to do server. We'll call it server. And here we'll make a file. And let's just call it like, I don't know, test.server.ts. Naming convention here kind of doesn't matter. The only thing that matters with naming convention in Next.js are your page.tsx files, your layout.tsx files. There's also error.tsx, and I think template might be one too, I forget. But they're all listed. We'll probably look at those eventually. But this is not a routable or a navigable route, right? So we can do whatever we want to do here. So this is use server, which literally just means that we have API endpoint here. And we're going to make some kind of function. We'll do submit. What was this one? Job listing. Route.ts is also a thing. Is route.ts a thing? Let's check. Because I don't want to be wrong. It's not one that I recall using. If we go to the API reference and go to file conventions, default.js, error.js, instrumentation, I don't know that one. Layout, loading is another one for loading states in a specific way. Not found, page, route.js is one. Oh yeah, so route is a backend. It's another way to do an API endpoint, which you probably really won't have to use too often for Next.js stuff. If you're doing something like webhooks, where you need your backend to communicate with some other service, yeah, you're probably going to have something like that. If you're literally just fetching data to just load a stream right to your client, you can do that pretty much every single time in a server component. So like in your page.tsx file, like why make another endpoint when you can just fetch data right here and then pass it down as props into whatever client components you have. It's a weird way to wrap your head around like how to fetch data and, provide data to your application. But once you start doing it, it's very nice and simplistic. But yeah, Route.js, Route.ts is a thing. You are correct. Where you could do like your more basic, get, post, put, delete, patch route handlers. So maybe we'll end up doing that at some point, depending on what we do with this application. But yeah, good call. All right, so we've got test server TS, we got commit, submit job listing, and we're making this some kind of a function. And you know what I want to do real quick? I know they have a thing in here where I don't remember if it's in their documentation or not. Let's go here and let's go to learn next. If not, I'll just do like a ChatGPT thing or something real quick to try to figure out what this is. But can I? There we go. There is something in here that I would love to find real quick if I can, because I don't remember the. Maybe I should just try to figure it out. One of these has an example of just a quick function to make a promise and await that promise, and I always forget the right syntax to use for this, and I always end up looking it up. All right, let's just do this. Let's go to ChatGPT. Do I need to sign in to do this? Nope. You give me a TypeScript function to await a simulated promise, because I forget how to do it every time. Yeah, okay, that's what I want. This is, I think, more than actually what I need to do. Let's take your function, and maybe we can simplify this a little bit. Get out of here. Simulate promise, delay, returns a promise, string? Why string? Return to promise, resolve, set timeout. So we can just do something like, make this an async, await new promise when we resolve. Don't need to import resolve. Thank you. And we just do a sets timeout. Oops. I think I could just return that and do, I don't know, 600, right? This is all I want. I don't need this whole big function. That's good enough. So I want to throw this in here just to simulate a server delay, right? Because not everything's going to be instant, and I don't have a database to actually, like, I should say DB delay. I don't have a database to connect to right now and actually, like, show us a good async await process. So we'll just async this thing and do whatever function we're going to run in here. So do I have format document with, do I have prettier in here? I do, and I don't have this saving on, or formatting on save. Let's do format on save. Can I do that, or do I just go to settings? Where is the settings here for this? This one. Yes. Format on save. Does say format on save checked, but it isn't for some reason, so whatever, we'll move on. Okay, so we've got a timeout that we're awaiting here, and we want to take in some data, right? And we're going to do something with this data. We have in our job listing form this job listing type. So my preference on these things is either is typically to have my type on the back end. I don't know why. It kind of doesn't matter. As long as you're consistent with it, you can really put them wherever you want them to be. But let's go back to here. Let's go back a couple times on this. It's whatever pattern you want to establish of where these things should live, you can put them there. So we're going to move this one, and we're going to move a bunch of files all over the place. I can't put it in this file. If I were to try to export, maybe we can try this. Because I know it's going to give me an error. But if we were to, let's just go ahead and take the same stuff. Let's just copy it for now. And if we do this, and we import Z from Zod, And if we try to export this stuff, like if we were going to just have this defined in one place and use it on the back end, I'm pretty sure that this is going to throw an error if I try to import somewhere, I think. Let's see. Right, because then I would get rid of it here. And I'd want to import job listing type and job listing schema. It's not yelling at me, which is weird. Probably because I'm not exporting this yet. Do I need to export default, I think? Maybe I don't need to export default this. Maybe I can just leave it as export and it'll work. And we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. In either case, I probably won't keep this here either because sometimes I just like these things to be in their own type files. So let's do job listing dot type dot ts, because I'd much rather have that, just so we don't kind of crowd ourselves here. Import, actually I can do this too. On the thing, do a control space. Now it's gonna, why does it like that for me? Maybe I have to do control enter, I think. Let's try that. Control space and then does it every time. Whatever. Job listing type. We can get rid of some of this. We can go back to here, change our imports for this stuff. Okay. Looking good, looking good. We can pop that down, get that away. Okay. So we want to send in some data of job listing type. So we've got all our types here. And all we're going to do for the moment is just console.log our data, just to make sure we actually connect to this thing. So from our front end now, we've got our job listing form. We do have a submit button here. So we can handle this in a couple different ways. We've already got an onSubmit function here, which it lives right here, right? And we're just console logging the data on the front end. We could, if we wanted to, tie our action to the submit button with an on-click handler. So don't think that this is only for forms and only specifically for forms. There's a lot of documentation or a lot of stuff in the documentation on Next.js about your use server API endpoints and server actions, only like just all of them being about forms, just forms, 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 forms. But that's not really the case. It can literally be whatever. So we will import, what did we call it? Submit job listing. I really should, because I don't want to have different naming conventions. Submit job listing. And then the real estate here, killing it. All right, so we will import submit job listing. So this is our server action, and we'll still log the data on the front end, why not? But we're also going to now call submit job listing and send in our data. So we have this typed out here as our job list type. So this knows, which we have typed out the same way, that our data matches what our function on the back end needs. So let's see what happens now, right? If I just don't do anything else but console log this data, let's pull up our actual terminal now, because we've got two things happening. We go back to our page. Here's our page. Okay, let's just run some test data here again. Test title, test manager, and we'll throw in a 2, and we're submitting. What's happening? Well, I don't see anything on the server side for some reason. I'm still working through that to the front end. Did I not save everything? Save all. Let's try this again. Oh. No? What are we doing wrong? Is it my timeout causing a problem? You want to move this up and see if we can just do that then? What do we think is going wrong? Do I need to export default? If this doesn't fix it, we'll submit. We'll look at the documentation and see. And now I have to change my import, right? Because this is no longer that. It is the default. And now let's try this again. And for some reason, I am still just not getting my data on the back end. And I don't know why. Let's think about this for a sec. If anybody has any ideas, shout them out. We'll go ahead and kill it and redo it, just as a precaution. The classic restart, which probably won't work. We'll see though. Now I can't click this for some reason. What's going on? There we go. The restart was the answer. Okay. So cool. Anyway, minor embarrassment from technical difficulties aside, let's see what we have going on here, right? This console.log is our server side console.log. And we have our data. Pretty cool. For those of you who are working on full stack projects and setting up like your back end and your front end and finding the ways for them to communicate, doing something like this is so just simple. Like there's nothing, right? Like we talked about before, like we should be checking the user is auth to do this kind of thing, checking they have the right security roles, whatever, and bounce them out if they don't. But man, how simple. I've worked with TRPC quite a bit, have implemented it in one of my projects at my job, and I super love what TRPC does, and it really does make connecting front end and back end super, super simple. What it doesn't make super, super simple is like if you're trying to wrap that project up in a Docker container and actually move it to production, they don't give you a whole lot of help on how to set that up. So there's a lot of stuff you got to do to actually navigate that. But Next.js is a really nice, easy framework to just be like, here's a full stack application, go. And this is a really nice plus to just be like super, super easy and simple way to have your front end communicate with your back end and start sending some data. Never used TRPC, but it seems pretty cool. It is really cool. I really do appreciate what TRPC does. I'm going to be comparing kind of like my current knowledge as a developer with TRPC, with GraphQL, and with Next.js. because when I first worked with Next.js was like over a year ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I guess a year and a half ago, when I started doing the We Should Watch project. And some of the stuff was like just coming out in Next 13, and now they're on Next 14, soon to release Next 15, while they're waiting on React to do their 19 release. But some of the stuff was coming out as like unstable and whatever. But you know, now the userver stuff, server actions are like ready to go. Kind of meaning like TRPC isn't super necessary, but it's a different architecture, and it has a lot of good validation stuff built into it. If you use like something like Zod or Yup or whatever, any validation library. But anyway, let's look at more of this stuff. So we know we're connecting here. We're sending back data. That's all cool. What we aren't doing yet is, what do we want to start with? Let's go back and look at our Excalibur stuff. So we have already simulated a submission here. We're showing the data on the back end with our console.log. Cool. Those are some really messy check marks. Let's try that a little bit better. There we go. And then I could just copy this one. We got that going. We are showing the data on the back end. We are console logging. So let's validate. Let's validate some data on the back end. Let's see how easy this can be with Zod. So if we recall now, we've got our object here with Zod. Zod does a really cool job for us of giving us runtime validation, right? Versus TypeScript, which, you know, gives us our fun like IDE warnings and errors and stuff. But like, you can do whatever you're doing in TypeScript and say, oh, this is supposed to be a string, but after that point, you're not going to be able to throw any kind of errors if something is not matching, right? So last time when we set this up, we did set up a message here with job title, where we put a minimum of 2 characters and says, here's a message, job title must have a minimum of 2 characters. So we're going to be able to do this. Let's see if I can do this off of memory before I go back and check the documentation, and we'll go, I guess, step by step on this thing. So with Zod, right now we're going to import our job listing schema, the Zod object that we made, and we're going to use that in our function here. So we're going to set this in a constant. We're going to call it result, and we're going to do job listing schema dot. We've got a bunch of stuff here. The one that I'm going to do is safe parse. Safe parse is going to allow us to run our data that's coming in through this, through our schema, and it's going to compare all the stuff that we get. Right, you can see here again, like we got Zod string on all this stuff, Zod number. And if anything doesn't match up, like for example, if we get an object that has, I'm just going to copy a few of these things. If we get an object that has, again, can't do the keyboard shortcuts, that has this stuff, you know, data 1, data 2, whatever, but then we get something else we weren't expecting, like whatever this is, Zod's going to kick this whole thing out. So none of that extra data is going to sink in, which is cool. That's a very safe thing to do, because you never know when someone's going to try to send anything kind of malicious your way. So you only get the stuff you expect to get. So boom, that gets cut out. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to check for these requirements we put on here, a minimum of 2 characters. And if something's wrong, it's going to give us some error messages. So result's going to have some stuff in it, because result's going to be an object. We could destructure this, I guess, up front if we want to, right? Success, data, error. But just for simplicity right now, let's stick with result. I'll say if result dot error. We're going to do something with the error. And I think we're just going to console.log right now. Result.error. Because I think we've got an object here. And I believe issues or message might be what we work out, or errors. Error.errors. We'll see. But let's just log this whole thing and see what happens. If we don't hit any errors, we're just going to console.log. Good job, no errors. And we'll just do that. Cool. So we'll go back to our form over here. We've still got data in here. And we said the job title has a minimum of 2 characters, right? Oh, look at this. I didn't set any of this up. At least not manually. Job title must have a minimum of 2 characters. It's right there already. Let's take a look at why that is, shall we? Because I was going to do that. I thought I had to do that manually. But I guess shadcn components just set that up for me automatically, which is, wow, that's really, really nice. I'm impressed by that. I'm thinking that's form.message or form message, right? If we comment that out and save it, yeah, that just went away. So we've got this component here that's already taking care of the client-side validation for us in shadcn. Can we go look at this? Let's open this component up. Let's look at what form message is. Error form message ID is use form field. Use form field is a React hook form function or a hook, right? Use form. Oh no, is it a function that they built? Hold on, I'm not using my keyboard shortcuts correctly. Use form field looks like a hook that they set up. shadcn field context, React use context, form item context, form field context. There's a bunch of context being used here with the controller with props. Get field state, use form context, field context at name. If there's no context, throw an error. It has to be used within form field. So just setting up its own context for all this stuff. Okay. So we see that at least. And where did the form message go? Form message. So it is returning our error here just as a p tag, right? Like our body here, which comes from, if there is an error, a string method on error.message or children. Use form field. So where does error come from in this? Probably in field state. So I guess field state, get field state, is all coming from this whole thing, because we have this job listing type schema in Zod Resolver. So that's really, really convenient that just does that for you automatically like that. So we know it's there. Let's put a single letter and let's submit this anyway. Is this going to goof on me again? Is it not going to let me submit because I have that validation there? Seems like it. So I'm going to comment that out for now. So we don't have our resolver on the front end. And am I going to have to refresh and redo everything? Let's see. There's a T, there's some stuff, here's some stuff. There we go, okay. So we saw, which is a good thing, number one, with React Hook Form and shadcn, that combination made it really, really easy to prevent submission of the form when we had an error. That's pretty darn cool. I like that a lot. It also depends on how you want to display your error messages to the user. I think having something like that on a form, just a little title or description on the bottom, is very clean and very nice. You might prefer having a toast notification pop up or something. We'll see if we can set something like that up as well, which that's more so going to be for our like bounce back on the server side stuff, I think, is where I would prefer to have that. So here, let's go back to our server file. So we know we had some kind of error because we just purposely submitted something with an error, less than 2 letters in this job title. We console.log result that error, and let's bring this up and see what we got. Result.error gives us an issues array. The issues array has an object, or will potentially have multiple objects in it, which is a code, this is from Zod, telling us that it's too small. The minimum we have is 2 characters. The type that we're expecting is a string. I don't know what inclusive and exact are in this case, but we see our message here of job title must have a minimum of 2 characters. And this just says array because I didn't JSON.stringify this thing, which we can. Let's do that. So we'll just submit this one more time and take a look at the object kind of in a bigger, man, this is, I guess because I'm only saving the server side, it's not, I don't know, something's going on with that hot refresh or hot reload. Okay, so all the way here at the bottom now is a stringified version where we have message, right? We see that message, path, job title. So it tells you where the error message is coming from, name, Zod error. I still logged good job, no errors because I didn't actually return this, right? But whatever, it doesn't matter. So that's pretty cool. The thing we really want to do with this, I mean, we know that we should be preventing errors on the front end by our client side logic. We should also return errors on the server side if something goes wrong and display an error to the client. I'm not really sure how we're going to want to handle this exactly because, like, I really like what they have set up with React Hook Form and ShadCN and showing the client-side errors, like, because it shows you as you're typing, which is really, really neat, versus typing a bunch of stuff, hitting submit, and then getting errors back. Like, that's a bummer. It's not a super great user experience, so anything you could do to show your client or your user ahead of time what's going wrong and how they can fix it, good stuff. Let me grab a drink here. Okay, so what next? What do we want to do? The form component is wild. Form component is wild. Yeah, my first time messing around with this, like, just, I don't know why I'm going to have to keep refreshing this. I don't know why the reload's not on, but whatever. Just to do our thing again here. Clicking that submit button gives us now this thing. We can do some other stuff here. So in React Hook Form, oh boy, what is the revalidate mode, I think? What does this give us? On blur, on change, on submit. On change, I think. So I think there's a way to just enable all of them. I don't know if I'm going to have to keep refreshing this every single time. That's annoying. I'm going to have to look into why that might be. But no, that's not doing it for us. Let's go look at the React Hook Form documentation. And make this a little bit bigger. Get started. Let's go to apply validation. Maybe it'll be easier if we go to, where is just their basic ass use form, revalidate, on change blur, on submit. I really thought there was a way to do just all at once. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, I'm not going to stress on it, but at least we know we can change the way that this does some validation stuff, which we should be able to do on blur. And because ShadCN is so integrated with this, I wonder if it'll just work or if we have to do anything else for it ourselves. Like we do this and then pop off. Am I missing something? Oops. Can close that. I don't need that. Or am I just not changing the right thing? Because it's still doing it on submit. Is this just not? Let's see. Next.js is having a bad look right now, huh? If I have to keep killing the server and redoing it every single time. On blur doesn't seem to work. I must be changing the wrong thing. What else we got in here? No, that's all. All right, whatever. Let's move on so we could do some more stuff that we actually want to do tonight. Okay. So we have some front end and back end communication. That's fun. We are doing some amount of validation on the back end with Zod. That's cool. Respond with errors for front end, which we're going to let the front end take care of those errors because that's nice and easy for us. Make us actually set this app up a little more quickly for us without doing a whole lot of extra stuff. Front end data validation we have already because ShadCN sent it up nice and easy. Cool. I copied my thing for a reason here. Oops. Go back to this. Come on now. Copy. Front end validation, cool. I guess without just doing some goofy back end stuff, maybe what we can do is do the revalidating the cache on the front end and see how that works out for us. So we can talk about data fetching, I guess, right? So what do we want to do? We can simulate a backend call to a database. We should be able to do this anyway, if what I'm thinking about, if we can make this work correctly. Let's see. We're gonna import another package here or install another package, because let's go back to the Next.js documentation, and if we look at their data fetching stuff, we're going to have something in here. I don't want to do fetch, but we're going to do probably this. We're not going to use unstable cache yet, but a lot of the stuff in here is about using the fetch API to get data. So like if you were fetching from an external API somewhere and you want to use their extended fetch, you can do that. So like Next.js, they're going to change this in Next.js 15. I don't know if this documentation is 15 or not. It probably is. But you can use their extended fetch to call whatever endpoint. We could make an endpoint with those route files that we were looking at before, but I'm not really interested in doing that right now. Make this fetch to whatever your place is where you're getting data from. And you can see they have some kind of cache stuff in here. Which you probably should be caching data, right? And this talks about how it's going to opt in to caching and fetching data on the client. So here's where we're at. This is what I want. Oh no, that's not what I want. This is within client components. Caching data with an ORM or database. So If you use their fetch API, you could fetch from an external source, or you could make a route handler is what they're called in Next.js land. Maybe that's just standard. I don't remember. But if you're making a route file or having an actual API endpoint that you're going to make in your Next.js application, you can use fetch for that. Or most likely, you're going to have some kind of ORM probably that is communicating directly with your database, which means we're going to use Drizzle at some point once we actually get more of this stuff set up and get a database. We'll use Drizzle. Or you might be using Prisma or Keasely or what else is out there? I don't remember. What are some other popular ORMs? Or you might just be writing raw SQL yourself and connecting to a database some way. You might be using Supabase and be using their client, which I went back and used that again recently, and it's honestly pretty decent. But we'll use unstable cache because that's what we're going to do to utilize their caching. Here you can see Drizzle is nice. I'm excited to check it out. I really haven't at this point, so this will be my first experience once we start setting everything up. But in this is what we will end up doing with Drizzle. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And so we will have a function that will wrap in this unstable cache thing here. Here's our actual async function that will get, whatever our database call is, if it's Drizzle, it's whatever else, database select from some table and get us some data. This is the actual function that we call to get our data from a database. We'll wrap it in this unstable cache. We put a couple tags on here. I believe this first tag here is for some of the backend magic that Next.js is doing with how it's storing cache. But this other set of tags, we can set a time for revalidation, which means I think this is seconds. 3,600 seconds. So after 3,600 seconds, the next person that goes to the page that calls this function, then they'll get new data. Or we have this tag on here so that when we do some kind of mutation event, in our case, submit that job listing form, we can call manually to revalidate, and then it's going to run this function again off of saying revalidate this tag. Then whatever page has this data will just revalidate and send down that new data. So that's what I'd like to simulate here. So we'll see if we can make it all work out. And this is an example of what we're going to do, actually, which is just we have a page component, right? Our page file. We're going to call our database action to get our data and just pass it down into our page and display it on the page. So some of the stuff here, this talks about reusing some data. Let's not go too deep into the documentation yet. Let's try to set some of this stuff up. So I need to figure out what I can do with this. Oh, the reason I was going back to the documentation was because of, let's see if it's here. Is it server only? Yes. So where do they talk about server only? Here we go. We recommend using the server only package to make sure server data fetching functions are never used on the client. What does this mean for us? We can, if we wanted to, make this stuff live very close together. So we talked about this already here, where we could do our data fetching right on this page.tsx file, because this is a server component, which means it's going to render on the server. It's going to do whatever it does, data fetching, all that stuff on the server. Even if we have secret keys here that we have in our environment variables, well, you can use them right here. And it's going to do all the stuff it needs to do on the server side, build out the HTML, and then just send the HTML down to the client, which means by the time it gets to your client, none of this stuff is exposed, which is really, really cool. Because if you've got some simple stuff here, you can do all of your data work right here in this page. That rocks. And let's, I guess we can show that off. And if we want to move stuff around, we can. The other option is, let's say you're going to set up a database function that you'll use in multiple places, right? Like get data dot, am I doing a dot server here? Sure, dot server.ts. We're going to do const get my data is whatever your DB function is, right? DB call. So if you are exporting this, let's say you use it here in this page.tsx file, you can import get my data and you can call it right here. Right? And then you pass down your data into whatever stuff here. You could just do like I gotta wrap this in brackets. Even though we're not getting actual data, I'm just doing this for funsies. Right, and just display your data on the screen. That would work. This wouldn't be run on the client side, right? This is a server component. But if we wanted to use this somewhere else, let's say we accidentally have our use client component here. We can get rid of Zod. Our form component. I could accidentally import this here. I could try to call this on the client, and then I might be exposing some secret keys if I've got some secret keys in here, right? That's bad news. So we've got a use server only package, which I think is just PNPMI server only. I think I'm right with that. But what that's going to do is that's going to warn us if we were to mark something as server only and import it on the client. So let's double check just to make sure I don't download anything weird. I'm going to set it up, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yeah, 660,000 weekly downloads. This seems right. It's funny that the React.js homepage. Okay, cool. Let's install that. So we've got that. And I've never, funny enough, I've never actually used it to get to try to emulate a warning. We can try that and see what happens. So what we would do here is we would do import server only, and that flags this whole thing now as server only, which means if we try to use it somewhere, we should get a warning. Where does the convention of using server in getData.server.ts come from? Honestly, I'm just doing it. It's not like a best practice or anything. For us, for right now, I'm just throwing it in there just for a quick reference, so we can be like, okay, this is a server file. We know we're using these things for server purposes. They're also in a server folder. But what I'm going to end up doing at some point in the future is I'm going to co-locate a lot of this stuff. So there's a couple things you can do when it comes to organizing your project that some people call your best practice or whatever, or some people are doing and recommending as their best practice. Let's talk about this a little bit. So if we talk about organizing our project, you've got a couple different things you can do. I think the most popular thing you're going to hear people say is you've got your app folder, and with current Next.js architecture, everything kind of lives under app, right? Let's extend this out a little bit more. You don't need a source folder. I like having a source folder. We're not really even using it for too much yet, but we have our components outside of app. You can put this components folder inside of app. Some people are doing that. I don't super love it. I would rather have my app folder be just the routes and stuff. And depending on what's in those routes, that's where we're going to maybe add some extra stuff. So the first thing people do is they've got this app folder, and then they will, underneath that, put a server file or like server actions, folder. And then under that, they will have all their different server actions, like, submit, job, post, and whatever else. And like over time, depending on how big your application is, this just fills up with all of these files. And that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can totally do that and stay organized, and it's cool. Something that I have grown accustomed to doing, given what Next.js kind of allows us to do with co-locating files, is like, let's say we go in here and we make a folder, and we're going to have, come on, let's do this. Login. This will be a login route, right? We'll make a file here, page.tsx. We will, I'll make this a little bit bigger. We will const login page, right? And we will return something. Let's do a div login page. Export default login page. Okay. You know what I might be doing wrong too? Every time I'm trying to save, I might be hitting the wrong keyboard shortcut when I'm saving, but whatever. So we know that if we navigate to /login, it's going to take a second to load up, but we have a login page, right? Page.tsx, layout.tsx, those files we looked at before with have a specific naming convention, those are navigable files. So like if we were to put new file here and do layout, come on, man, make me look like a fool. Layout.tsx, const login layout. We have an error because I'm not finished with this file yet. Login layout, which will return, this is where you would have some kind of nav component, right? With all your different links or whatever. So, but I didn't put children in here. Layout needs children, which will put props, and we'll have children, which is a React node, which I need to import. Let's just do it this way. And then we will have this wrapped around it. We need a common parent here in our return, so we'll just do a fragment. And keyboard shortcuts. And then here is our children. We save that. What did I mess up? I didn't import my prop. Props, children. There we go. So here's our links wrapper layout around our login page. If we had multiple pages that we would navigate under this thing, if we do this, and we have, I think we did a little bit of this before, but if we have some kind of ID here, and we have other pages under ID, that layout would wrap everything, that those links, those navigation bar would stay there, right? So we can have a whole list of folders that get pretty complex and specific files that are exposed. Cool. So you can do this, and you can have your one server folder with all your server stuff in it, and just have everything live in one specific spot. That's kind of like your typical back-end and front-end split. Historical processes, I guess. But what you can do as well is, let's say in this login page, you've got your button, like you've got your form in here. We'll do this. We'll do another fragment. And we could do our whole build out with ShadCM, but we won't yet. Whatever. Good enough. So I can't even see the input, but that's fine. We'll just leave without it. So let's pretend you've got a bunch of fields on this page and we've got a submit button, and you're going to click submit, and that's going to do something. We don't need to have that in a whole separate folder, right? We can just put it in here, and we can do login. Oh man, every time I do this, it doesn't want to let me type. new file, login.server.ts. It can live right here, right where it's used. And this is where we can do our whole use server thing, and we can do const handle login equals whatever we're doing. And here's our, login process. So when you're asking about why am I doing name.server.ts, literally just to say like, oh, this is something that I'm using for some kind of server process. Because I would much rather, as we build out this application, have this co-location process just for the simplicity of navigation, having things be where I expect them to be. You can do this in your page folders, right? Like our login folder, like I demonstrated here. You could do it in a component if you really wanted to. Most of the time, I'm probably just going to stick to pages, I think, right? Because if a component is on a page, let's consider that server action as part of the page and not just part of the component itself, but whatever. But that's why. So if we go back to my Excalibur thing here, I don't know why I really did this here, to be honest, but rather than do our server completely separate from our front end stuff, why not just merge them a little bit more? Because that's what we're doing anyway with all of the Next.js and new React stuff. So I don't know how many people are doing this, to be honest. It has become a process that I really, really just favor. You can, of course, always control click and navigate through stuff, right? Like if we go look at our page, we've got the get my data function here. So I can, click and navigate to that, and it's just going to open the file. So cool, like quick navigation, whatever. But I don't know. I think when you have tons of stuff in a server folder or a server actions folder or whatever that don't necessarily relate to each other, if you're building a really big enterprise level application and you've just got like 200, 300, 400 files in there, it just gets crowded. So personal preference, long-winded explanation. I'm sorry, I tend to ramble a little bit, but hopefully that helped give you some insight into the why I'm doing what I'm doing here. Like we said, for right now, it's literally just to keep the habit, and eventually we'll actually make some more sense of it and do some stuff with it. So, cool. I feel my throat going again. Let me grab a drink. But thank you for the question, too. I appreciate the interaction more than me just talking at you guys for hours on end. Cool. You got it. Any other questions as we go along, just keep firing them. And if there's stuff I don't know, too, because I don't know everything, of course, we'll learn stuff together. Okay. What are we doing? We have a first-time chatter. Len Banana Zero. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if you just heard my long-winded rambling, but if you did, that's a fun introduction to what we're doing here. We are building an application together. We are building some kind of application to manage. You did. Yeah, welcome. I'm sure I'm going to do that a bunch. We're building an application to manage job applications. Inspiration here, a couple streams, we just kind of got together and talked about something we can build live on stream and just do a thing once a week on Thursdays. And we have been working through this giant whiteboard here of stuff. The inspiration came from a buddy of mine who was in chat during some of those streams. Scott suggested doing the job application stuff after we talk about like green tech and some other potential applications. Somebody mentioned data visualization. We'll try to do that too. But like when I was looking for my developer job, I was applying to tons and tons of places. And the only way I was managing all the stuff I was doing was a Google spreadsheet. And that kind of sucks. So I'd rather try to build something that people can utilize to manage that stuff in a better way. Where are you applying? What jobs are you applying to? Who are the contacts that you have? What are the tasks that you need to accomplish for that specific job application? Whether it's like finish the application, go to an interview, do a take-home assignment, whatever. So this is the goal. We're doing it once a week, so it's slow progress. We are also using Next.js and React server and client components and learning along the way and just educating each other as we kind of work through this thing. So right now we have a super basic form set up with shadcn and React Hook form. We've got some data validation going on. We are going to do some type of, we're already submitting to the backend. We're going to try to do a data load as if we were hitting a backend to get some data, display it to the client, see if we can revalidate that on submission and show some new stuff. So what are some ways we can do this here? There's a lot of different things we can do. What I think we might do is we're going to set up some bogus data, I guess. And we might not fetch this directly in this page because we want to do some kind of loading state. So maybe we start there before we start getting ahead of ourselves and doing the revalidation of cache data and all that stuff. Let's explore what loading states look like in Next.js and how we can do some of that stuff. So if we go back to the documentation, we can look at, is it in data fetching or maybe it's in rendering? No. Let's just do a search for it because it's streaming. I know it says streaming, loading and streaming, loading UI and streaming. Okay. So this is some fun stuff that it's primarily React, right? It's not Next.js doing magic here, but it's React with React suspense and allowing us to show some instant loading states for our user while we're fetching data. So we've talked about some of the file conventions in Next.js. That is a Next.js specific thing, right? Like loading.js, where we can have a loading.js file, which can show a loading state, which we can display as we're loading data. And then once the data loads, pop that stuff in. I'm sure you've seen this as you've navigated through different apps and websites, where you kind of get like that flashing grid of gray squares or whatever, and then all your images load at a certain point. So that's what this process is. This is instant loading states. An instant loading state is a fallback UI that is shown immediately upon navigation. You can pre-render loading indicators such as skeletons or spinners, or a small but meaningful part of future screens such as a cover photo, etc., etc. So their convention here is to create a loading state by adding a loading.js file inside of a folder. And they show us here like default loading, have some kind of loading skeleton UI. And we notice here this isn't a client component, right? This is a server component. In the same folder, loading.js will be nested inside layout.js. It will automatically wrap page.js file and any children below in a suspense boundary. So this is the Next.js stuff we need to be aware of. But again, it's not magic, right? This is just what's happening. We already did a very quick demo when we did a login page a few minutes ago about layouts and page and wrapping. It's literally just think of it like components and your child component, you know, when you wrap anything, right? In this div, we're wrapping this div. These are children. It's similar, right? If this was a component, if job form was a component that could take children, it would be like this. We would have this, and whatever we put here, we can actually just do this right now and show an example here of this, right? This isn't taking any props in yet, but if we do, just what we just did before, React node, and we take our props in here, we take our children, and somewhere in here, let's put it right above the button. Why not? Now, if we go back to our page, we don't have login anymore. We got rid of it. I can't see the children because I think I'm just using a basic p tag, or did not everything save? Not everything saved. There we go. This is the thing. There it is, right? So that's children. That's how children works. When you just wrap your component or whatever around whatever you're passing in as children. So layouts, by their file convention here, when in your folder, like right now we just have app because that's our main page, but we before had, can I bring it back? Oh, it's not going to let me bring back the actual, oh, create login. Can't undo it. Whatever. We'll make another one if we need to. We have any kind of navigation layout wraps around the page file. So what do we have in this layout? We have some of our theme provider stuff, which is how we're getting our themes that we're using with ShadCN. So like if we, on this button, I think this can take a variant. It sure can. Variant prop. And if we did this as destructive, that's going to make it a nice fun red color, I believe. Yep, now it's a fun red color. This, in our root layout, this theme provider wraps literally every single page that's going to render in our entire application and is providing our theme to this. Oh yeah, we do have this toggle too up top. Oh, gosh. Ooh. But that's how all that's working. And, fun fact, we know that our page.tsx file is a server component. We can look at our theme provider. It is a client component. So you can flashbang, yeah. So you can have a client component. Let's do it this way. Let me not type it this way. Let me type it in Excalidraw. I may have done this somewhere in here before already. This is going to be an absolute wreck by the end of this. So with wrapping components and stuff, we can do a client component. Okay. And then within that, we can have a server component. And this is going to be important because this will still render as a server component, render on the server side. That's the format you need to use for that kind of thing, right? If you need to do it like this. If you were instead to go into a component where you have use client at the top, and if in that you imported your server component and then just, you know, rendered it within your client component, if I can spell, this is technically what's called a boundary, right? So now anything imported into your client component becomes a client component. So even though this server component in the file itself doesn't say use client at the top, so you intend it to be a server component, it is no longer a server component because it's imported into the client. Hence why we need to know about this wrapping process. Anyway, that's another tangent. I'm sorry. Let's go back to the documentation here because we're talking about streaming states and loading. And let's see if I can set this up within the next, I don't know, 25-ish minutes before I call it a night. So layout wraps all this stuff. You can see they got some other stuff in here like a header, side nav, and then they've got page. And if we do a loading.tsx file, it automatically wraps page into suspense. So that's just a cool like convenience thing, right? So let's see if we can do a version of that. So in addition to loading.js, we can also manually create suspense boundaries, which is the same exact kind of thing. But we just do it ourselves, right? So let's get out of this. Let's get out of this. So we know right now, here's our layout, our root layout, and children is all of our pages, which right now all we have is one page file, which means that this should work out this way. If this page actually takes some time to load something, if it's a promise and has to get some data, we have to fulfill that promise, and then it comes back eventually, they're telling us if we put a loading.tsx file in here, what it's going to do, in effect. Oop, I don't want to do that. Is our loading file is then just going to, oh man, I'm so bad at these keyboard shortcuts. There we go. It's going to wrap our children in a suspense. If I shouldn't have put loading here, I really should put suspense, right? Which we could do manually. Let's do it the right way. We could do this anywhere we want to in our app. And then we've got a fallback here, which would just be something like, this is in effect what's going to happen with this file convention thing we're going to do. But again, it's not magic. It's just understanding what Next.js is doing when it compiles this stuff down and how it kind of inserts components into other components and all that stuff. We'll be doing this ourselves in various portions of the app as we build it out, I'm sure. But that's just kind of what's going to happen here. So let's experiment with it. So in app, new file, loading.tsx. We're going to do const, I don't know, call it root loading file, whatever. That doesn't, the naming here doesn't matter. As long as your file is called loading.tsx, that's what matters. And make it your default export. Root loading file. Okay. So we want to return something here. And also for the record, I don't have to do this. I could just do this and just have it be a default return and just do div, and we could just do like loading, right? Why not? I shouldn't have said default return. What is the right term for this? With your arrow functions, when you don't have to implicit return, I believe is the right terminology there, versus an explicit return. Yes, thank you, implicit. We got there. So that's an implicit return, right? Let's use the right terminology. We are developers. We are good developers. We should speak in the terminology. That's what you want to do when you're interviewing for a job, right? You want to make sure you use all those wonderful terms. All right, so right now, though, we've got that loading file. It's not really going to do anything, because if we refresh this, did I save everything? Looks like I did. But if we refresh this, like, we're not even going to see anything happen, right? Because this isn't actually calling any kind of database. There's no await happening here, right? There's no promise being fulfilled. None of that's happening. So let's go back and let's go to our, we had a little helper function here to just simulate a delay. So let's take that and let's go back into our page. I think I did this function correctly. We're going to find out. So if we do this now and call this an async function, which I hate doing this, so I want to do this as an arrow. Const home. Okay. I just prefer the look of arrow functions. I also kind of like to just keep the same thing everywhere. Single method of making a function component. Anyway, so now we've got an async function here. We can put this in here, I guess. And we've got, I think I may have lost it again. We'll copy our function there, go back to our page. And that's not what I tried to copy. Try that again. Got this. So if I just do this, what is going to happen? Oh, there it is. Now, I don't think I ever resolved that promise correctly for some reason. It seems, because I didn't return it, did I? Maybe that's what was going on when I was trying to post to the backend before. Do I just have this set up wrong? I wonder if I can figure this out. Well, at least we know, while we're figuring this out, at least we know right now that our loading state is technically working. Do I honestly need to put a thing here? Does that matter? I guess it does. Okay, that was it. I just had to put something in resolve, I guess. So let's make that a little bit longer. Let's do 800 milliseconds, I guess. So we can see now our page.tsx file, which is a server component, right, is now an async function component here, meaning that it is going to have some kind of promise within it. We need to await something. Right now, we just have a bogus time delay. But if we hit that refresh button, we see an instant is the key here, instant loading state, which right now just says loading, so that's going to be BS, but whatever. Before something happens and we now have our data, right? So we can now imagine, instead of just doing this bogus, oh wait, we are calling out to a database, we are getting some actual data, and then we are populating whatever we want on this page. That's really cool and super easy. What does shadcn have for us for? Does shadcn have anything for loading states? They probably have like a skeleton or something, right? Let's see. Skeleton. This is the thing we were talking about before, right? So we can, let's go ahead and let's install this while we do some of this other stuff. I don't know if I'm going to use it right away, but we'll get it in there. Because another way we can do this, and probably the pattern you're also going to end up using at some point, and maybe more often, is and also why the server component process is so like good and powerful is, let's get rid of a lot of this stuff. So we've got page.tsx, which we know can do this, but we're not going to have it do this right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another file in here. We'll put it in components. Why not? And we're just going to call this like, I don't know. We'll call this data display.tsx. Const data display. Really should get those quick setup things, but I just don't have it. So this is a server component, right? We're not putting use client at the top. We're going to make this async. We're going to put our promise resolve thing in here. And what we'll do is we'll just return something. You know, this is the data, right? So if we take this and we put this into our component here, and we just put this under job listing, what is going to happen if we just do this and nothing else? Because this isn't async anymore, right? And we know, because we've already refreshed this page a bunch of times, our job form doesn't take time to load, right? That shows up right away. Nothing's happening with that. But if I do this now, we see the whole thing still has that loading state, right? But the whole thing is blocked until just this data display shows up. So if we comment that out, let's do this again. See, I'm refreshing this, and it's instantaneous, right? There's no time for this to show up. But now that we have a component in here, that is doing its own data fetching, which is a really good pattern to have, right? Makes that really, really simplistic. This is the data. The whole thing is blocked from loading. So like we saw before now, we can import suspense from React. We can wrap this thing in suspense. And I don't know if we have to get rid of our, wrong one again. I don't know if we have to get rid of our loading.js file or not. We'll see. But if we do this, and we have fallback here, and we'll just do another div, and we'll do like, this is the manual suspense. We'll save that. Make sure I saved everything. Okay. Let's reload this and let's see what happens. Ooh, did we see that? Let's go back here. Let's set this to 2 seconds. A really long delay. But now that we have wrapped just this in suspense, and we know data display is going to do some amount of data fetching on its own, whatever data it is responsible for showing. This is streaming now. This is what they refer to as streaming UI. Let's refresh this page and let's watch what happens. Boom, here's our loading state. And then 2 seconds later, whatever we have fetched streams into our UI. Nothing else is changing up here, right? We didn't block anything from rendering before, like what we did before, where the whole page was blocked because something had to load, right? Now, just that one component down there gets to fetch whatever data it is responsible for and then display it once it's ready. Super cool. Really, really cool stuff. This is the kind of pattern we're going to end up implementing at some point. Once we have like a dashboard display, you know, and say something like you've got a dashboard with a bunch of squares on it, right? Like if we do something like this, which, did I draw one already? Yeah, okay. Let's say you've got some kind of dashboard like this, where you've just got whatever. These can be visual charts, or they can just be lists of data, whatever you want them to be. Each one of these squares is going to be its own server component that is responsible for fetching its own data and will be streamed in as it's ready, right? So let's say this my action items takes like half a second. Let's say this upcoming appointments takes 2 seconds for whatever reason. My action item is going to show up in that half a second, and then upcoming appointments will show up. Otherwise, this whole page would take 2 seconds for everything to show up, right? So streaming is really, really cool and really powerful and gives you a really good user experience and makes everything just feel way snappier. Even if you got like slow database stuff going on, everything feels a lot better. So that's all that stuff. I wonder, do I really want to try to squeeze in doing a revalidation at this point? I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to do that right this second because I've got a couple minutes left before I think I want to call it a night and do I've just been doing like 2 hours every time we do one of these things, right? But we're learning a bunch, and this has been really, really fun and really cool. So, do we want to commit the stuff that we did? I don't know that I'm going to commit to the... I guess I can, right, in case anybody wants to go and mess around with it. Should we just keep it all as it is? Let's do this right here too before I forget. We could probably make this a utility function. We've got a lib, we've got utils in here, but that's for a specific use case. Let's throw we'll call it delay, simulate delay.ts, and we will take this, go into simulate delay, and we'll just async that, and actually throw, what am I missing here? That and then that. Cool. And then we could just call that wherever we want to use it now. So instead of doing, well, I guess we can put delay as a number. We do delay here. We can set a default of 600 in case we don't pass something in, right? Why is this not, why is this like sometimes format, but then other times just doesn't? Weird, but okay. So now we can go into our data display and we can import, what did we call it? Simulate delay. And we can do, we did 2000 on this one. Let's make sure that still works. Yep, there it goes. And there's our resolve. Cool. And just, I guess, to also have it in the submit job listing, we can do that too. We can get this out of here. Why did I not have these both together? I thought I did. And then import simulate delay. Whoops. And we'll do await, simulate delay, whatever. Even though we didn't do anything with this yet, but that's fine. Okay, cool. I guess we'll go ahead and git add. Here's some git stuff I guess we can talk about real quick as we bring this one to a close. Are you guys interested in git stuff? I'm not the best at git, but I'm trying to do different git practices versus just git add all the time. Been looking at git status a lot first, right? Just to kind of see what's happening here. We know package.json and pnpm block are updated because we did install a dependency. We modified a couple pages here, and we added a bunch of new files. So we can do a couple different methods of adding stuff here. Like we can do git add a new file, right? Take this file, put that there. Now if we look at git status, we've got our new file added there, and that's being tracked now. We can git add all. I want to go back and I'm going to take out data display in a second. So we'll git add everything. And now if we do git status, we see everything's here. If we want to unstage a file, we can do git reset head and then paste that file in. And now if we do git status again, now we see that that file is now removed from our staging. So depending on how much stuff you're doing, you can do that. We can also do git. Let's do a modified file. Let's take these back out. Git reset head of this, and we'll do git reset head head of source app. What was the other one? Oh, the other one's a new file. All right, let's just do those. So git status, we see those two. Oh, it's not going to work with this one because it's untracked. Hold on. Which was just an updated file. Job listing form, that's what I want. Okay. Git reset head of this, because something I'd like to do now, we see we have two modified files that are unstaged after reset. Something I've been really liking to do is to git add-p. And git add-p kind of shows you your diff here, shows you your changes. So that if you made a mistake, this is kind of like your own mini code review, right? As you're going through and you're committing your changes here. So like if I see something here, I'm like, oh shit, I left a console.log in here that I didn't mean to leave. I can go make an adjustment. Otherwise it'd be like, yep, okay, add this thing. Yep, add that thing. Here's a bunch of, we took this whole thing out. We imported it instead. Yeah, I know I want to add this stuff. Stipulate job listing. Yep, we definitely want to do all this. Good, now those changes are being tracked correctly. If we git commit with a message. I don't know, basic back end and front end and streaming. Now we've got all that stuff committed. I'm not going to push it yet because let's say now I'm like, oh, I just had a minor thing I wanted to do here, minor change that I wanted to put here. Now if I do get status, I have another thing, right? But I already did my message. I can do git add the thing that I'm trying to add, git commit dash dash amend, which opens up this Vim process. We can see here my previous commit message, basic backend and front end and streaming. I never feel the need to ever update those messages, but once I've got that commit amend, then it's colon and Q and enter, and that's going to now add my another the amended commit here to our whole list of stuff. And let's go ahead and push that. So there's some Git stuff. If you needed or wanted any fun Git additional stuff. I don't know if you guys are using any of that, if you find it useful. But when you make a lot of changes and do a lot of small commits, because I haven't here, clearly we've just been talking and doing all this stuff, but been trying to do as small commits as possible. That way if something gets messed up, I've got points I can jump back to with resets and all that stuff. But there you go. I think I am at a good place for the night. I think we learned a lot of stuff tonight. I think we talked a lot about cool Next.js stuff, cool React stuff. I'm excited that we just went through and did some of these kind of examples, because now next time we can just bump up and do some new stuff. Would the first 2 streams where you went through the system design be watchable again? I'm interested in the architecture side of things and its process. That's a really good question. Are we able to get to those? I don't know that Twitch keeps them up. I didn't download them. I didn't think anybody would be interested in going back and watching that stuff. I'm sorry. Twitch.tv/EricLinkDev. Is anything still up? .tv/. Hey, that's me. EricLinkDev. Can we go see? Hey, that's me. EricLinkDev. Can we go see? Hey, that's me. What do I do this? Can we go see? Hey, that's me. What do I do this? Can we go see? Videos. What do I do this? Let's mute that. Videos. What do I do this? Or pause it. Pausing is probably better, huh? If we look at my stuff. Here's one from 7 days ago. What is it? Oh, is this? They both say 7 days ago. Does it only keep the videos from all videos? View all. What's here? This one's right now. Project planning. Another project planning. This one says 25 minutes. I didn't do a stream for 25 minutes. Oh, this might have been last week disconnected at a certain point. That's probably what's going on here. So I think it only keeps it for a week. I did not download those videos. I apologize. I should have saved them and put them up on YouTube for rewatching. But I don't know, to kind of just backfill you in on some of the architecture stuff, we really just talked a lot about the kind of data. We took like one and a half, maybe 2 whole sessions just to talk about the ideas of what we were going to work on. We just kind of looked at some articles that suggested types of projects, and data visualization came up. And then we were talking about, here's some of our list of stuff. Green tech app, job search board. We kind of just talked about some things that we might want to be doing from like a user functionality perspective. Like, what should the app do? Why is this an interesting thing to do? Right? I guess I started with like my general criteria of like, I want to do full stack. I want to do Next.js. I want to work with these libraries, whatever. Potentials. I was thinking about doing a basic to-do app because I was like, I want to be streaming this. How complicated can I make it? Apparently, we're going to get pretty complicated. Talked about green tech, which I'm still interested in, but I just don't know how to get the data and what's useful in green tech. But then we fell on job search, talked about the things we want to do with this, tracking, whatever. And then we just kind of threw a whole bunch of data at the wall and said, here's stuff we'd probably consider, and just vomited ideas of like, what was I doing when I looked for jobs? What kind of things was I tracking? And then we took that, we broke that down into potential data models or schemas, just to kind of get our brains working of like, what is the crud of it all? What kind of stuff are we taking in? And then from that point, how are we going to use and manage this stuff? We did like a basic screen of like, here's something of an idea of what we can end up with. It'll look different and maybe function different, but whatever. We have some kind of navigation to go through different things. How do we interact with these things? We don't really know yet, but here it kind of is everything. I did a bunch of different just drawings about server components and different data fetching stuff. What else is in here? Oh, they're just BS kind of screens that we might end up doing something with. But yeah, that was kind of the main process of the general architecting of, I mean, I wouldn't even really call it too much architecting, because we were just talking about the basics of the ideas and stuff, but it's the beginning phases of the project, right? And we probably could have planned a little bit more before we started coding, but I was just excited about coding, so I jumped in. But that's that. I don't know. I guess I should, y'all think I should just be downloading these and just putting them up on YouTube and just saying, here you go for folks that want to watch 2-hour-long streaming session, and then maybe we get more people to join in with us too at some point. I guess I'll start doing that. Just post them on up there. So hey, if you're watching us on YouTube later, hello, come join us on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, and hang out and do some coding stuff. But that's all that. All right, I'm gonna call it an evening. Thank you everybody for hanging out with me tonight. Appreciate the repeat folks coming back each Thursday and doing the damn thing with me. Next week we'll probably just do some more of this general stuff and actually like build out some kind of working example of submitting to a backend, adding quote unquote to a database. We'll simulate that process. We'll revalidate, and we'll show new data on a refetch and all that stuff. And then after that point, we can actually start maybe building out some real forms and, making more of this kind of stepwise of what it's going to eventually be. And then we'll pretty it up and make it all fun and interesting. But that's it. See you all next week. Have a good one.